I didn't cry that night. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the tears had nowhere left to go. They had drowned too many yesterdays already. My face was calm. My eyes, dry like a desert that once knew rain. People said, "You're strong." I smiled. But they didn't know. The smile was just a soldier, guarding the ruins of my heart. I had mastered the art of appearing alive. The world clapped for my courage. But none saw the ghosts that danced behind my ribs. Every heartbeat felt rehearsed. Every breath an obligation. I laughed sometimes, but even my laughter sounded borrowed, like an echo from a life I no longer belonged to. I didn't cry, but inside, something had withered quietly, like a rose pressed between pages of an unfinished love story. No one saw the funeral that took place inside my chest. No one attended, not even me. I was too busy pretending that I was still okay. Once upon a time, I believed pain needed sound to be real. Now I know the loudest heartbreaks are the ones that never make a noise. Silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it means the war is over, because there's nothing left to fight for. When people said, "Move on," I nodded. I even convinced myself I did. But grief isn't a guest that leaves politely. It hides in the corners of your laughter, in the pauses between your words. It waits, patient and loyal, until something beautiful reminds you of everything you lost. The world never noticed the change, but I did. I noticed how music stopped feeling magical, how sunsets stopped feeling golden, how mornings started looking like copies of each other. I noticed how even joy felt like wearing someone else's clothes. Beautiful, but not mine. They say time heals, but time only teaches you how to hide the wound better. I didn't cry, not because I was brave, but because I was already gone. My eyes forgot the language of tears. My soul forgot the rhythm of hope. I was breathing, but I wasn't living. Crescent moon, sometimes silence isn't calmness, it's absence. And I was absent. Even when I was there, my heart forgot how to feel. But my body remembered everything. The weight in my chest each morning, the ache behind my eyes, the tremor in my hands. When someone said my name kindly, as if love could return just by being spoken. I didn't cry, but my soul did, in ways only silence could translate. My body carried grief like armor, heavy, cold, but necessary to survive among smiling faces. I used to believe healing meant forgetting. Now I know. Healing means remembering, without bleeding. But I wasn't there yet. Every memory was a reopened wound. And every "I'm fine" was a carefully wrapped bandage around a fracture that never mended. They said, "Time will fix you." But time only made me fluent in the language of pretending. I became polite with pain, calling it by softer names. Growth, maturity, lesson. But deep down I knew I was just tired. My body remembered the nights I didn't sleep, how my breath felt like borrowed air. It remembered the mornings when I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the reflection. A stranger wearing my face, my smile, my silence. The world saw my calm, but they didn't see how my hands would clench when love was mentioned, how my chest would tighten when someone laughed too sincerely, because I had forgotten what sincerity felt like. People said, "You've changed." And maybe I had. But change isn't always evolution. Sometimes it's erosion. Pieces of yourself wearing away quietly, until you become a beautiful ruin. I didn't cry, not because I was okay, but because I had learned how to bleed without blood. At night, I'd lie still, listening to the quiet hum of my heart. It beat, but without music. Once, it danced for love. Now, it just existed. To remind me I was still tethered to the world. My body remembered the touch that once felt like home. The warmth that used to melt my walls. But memory can be cruel. It keeps replaying love long after it's gone. Like a song stuck on a broken record. I envied those who cried freely, whose pain had sound and release. Because mine was locked inside. A storm sealed in a glass heart. Raging but unseen. They said I was composed. But they didn't know. It wasn't control. It was exhaustion. It takes energy to fall apart. And I had none left. Sometimes, in rare moments of quiet honesty, I would whisper to myself, "This isn't strength. This is survival." And that whisper was the closest thing to truth I had spoken in months. I didn't cry, but every heartbeat mourned something I had lost. The innocence of trust, the warmth of belonging, the melody of being understood. And even though I walked through the world unbroken, my reflection told another story. Because you can only pretend to be alive for so long, before the mirror stops believing you. Crescent Moon, I was a living poem, written beautifully, but read by no one. They said, "You look better now." And I smiled, because it's easier to let people believe in your healing, than to explain that your silence has simply learned how to wear makeup. My smile became my crown, polished, royal, unshakable. But underneath, my heart still walked barefoot on the shards of yesterday. There was a time when every sunrise felt like a promise. Now, it feels like a performance. I wake up, put on hope like perfume. Not because I believe, but because the world loves the scent of optimism. They say light always returns after darkness. But sometimes, the light only reminds you how long you've been in the dark. I didn't cry, but the storm had left its fingerprints everywhere. In the way I hesitated before smiling. In the way I double-checked my joy. As if happiness were a crime I might be caught committing. I learned to laugh softly. Not too loud, not too long. Because echoes can wake up memories. I've tried to let sleep. Every strong person you meet was once a soft one, who decided that tears no longer worked. I was that person. I stopped asking the world for gentleness, and started giving it to myself, even if it felt foreign. Self-love came to me quietly, like a stranger knocking at midnight. At first, I didn't trust it, but slowly, I let it in. And in that acceptance, I found a new kind of peace. Not loud, not grand, but steady. My smile survived, yes, but it wasn't the same smile. It was wiser now. It knew the price of light. It knew what it meant to be broken beautifully. Some nights, I still catch my reflection and whisper, "You did it. You stayed." Because staying, even when you no longer feel alive, is its own kind of courage. People think the opposite of pain is joy. But I've learned, the opposite of pain is peace. And peace doesn't come wrapped in laughter. It comes in silence that no longer hurts. One day, I stopped fighting the storm. I stopped demanding answers from the wind that took everything away. And in that surrender, I finally found rest. I didn't cry when I lost love. I cried when I realized I could survive without it. Because survival is heavier than heartbreak. It asks you to keep walking on legs that tremble with memory. But I walked anyway. And each step was a small rebellion against the death I carried inside. Now, when people see my smile, they think it's happiness. But it's more than that. It's proof. Proof that I can bloom again, even in soil watered by grief. I am no longer the same. And maybe that's the point. Maybe pain was never meant to destroy me, only to carve space for something deeper, quieter, truer. So I wear my smile proudly now, like a crown forged from sorrow and grace. Because though I didn't cry, I learned how to resurrect myself from silence. Crescent moon, I didn't cry, but I rebuilt myself from the ashes of what died inside me. There was a time I thought emptiness was the end, that once the heart became quiet, it could never sing again. But I was wrong. Emptiness wasn't death. It was the soil where strength began to grow. When everything inside me turned silent, a strange kind of clarity began to whisper. It said, "You've already lost what you feared losing. Now nothing can break you anymore." For years, I mistook stillness for defeat. But stillness is what the ocean does before it learns how to rise again. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to rise. Not with fire, not with noise, but with calm. A calm that came from knowing no one could hurt me deeper than I had already been hurt. I began to speak to myself gently. After years of calling my heart weak, I finally told it, "You did well." I thanked my silence for keeping me alive, for carrying me through storms that words could never survive. And in that gratitude, something beautiful happened. My emptiness began to bloom. It didn't bloom in color. It bloomed in wisdom. In the way I could now sit in my pain, without letting it consume me. In the way I could remember the past, without reopening the wound. The world thought I had healed. But no, I had transformed. Healing is about returning to who you were. Transformation is becoming someone who can never be broken the same way again. I stopped chasing people who couldn't hear my silence. I stopped begging love to come dressed as understanding. And I learned, sometimes love doesn't leave you. It simply changes form, becoming the strength you use to stand alone. I began to love differently. Not desperately, not fearfully, but quietly, like the way dawn loves the earth, without needing to be seen. My emptiness became my temple, a sacred place, where peace didn't need permission to exist. I no longer needed validation to feel worthy. I no longer needed company to feel whole. People often ask, "How did you survive?" And I smile, because survival isn't something you plan. It's something your soul decides. When your heart has no strength left to argue. I didn't cry, but I learned to pray differently. Not with words, but with surrender. My silence became my prayer. My breathing, my gratitude. My endurance, my faith. And in that surrender, I found something greater than happiness. I found peace. Now, I see beauty where pain once lived. The scars on my soul are no longer signs of defeat. They are royal medals of survival. Each one tells a story. I stayed. I endured. I rose. And though I walk softer now, I walk stronger. Because when emptiness blooms, it doesn't bloom in flowers. It blooms in resilience. I am not who I was before the pain. I am quieter, yes, but there's a kingdom inside my calm. And in that kingdom, I rule with grace, not fear. Crescent moon, I didn't cry, but I rebuilt my crown. From the petals of my pain, I didn't cry, but somewhere between the silence and the scars, life returned to me quietly, not as laughter, not as love, but as breath, steady, sacred, and new. I began to live again, not because the pain was gone, but because I had learned to build peace around it. Grief stayed, but it stopped roaring. It sat beside me like an old friend, and I learned to sip tea with it, instead of fighting it every morning. For so long, I thought healing meant forgetting. But healing isn't amnesia. It's acceptance. It's standing in the ruins of who you were, and saying, I still deserve light. There were days when I'd smile, and actually mean it. Not because everything was okay, but because I had finally stopped waiting for everything to be perfect. The heart that once broke now beats differently. Slower, wiser, more careful about what it lets in. It doesn't chase storms anymore. It waits for calm skies. And in that patience, I found a royal kind of strength. Not loud like power, but soft like grace. Because the greatest victory is not conquering the world. It's learning to conquer your own chaos. I started noticing small things again. The way sunlight touched my walls. The way rain sounded less like sorrow and more like rhythm. The world hadn't changed. I had. My silence had softened. It no longer hurt to breathe. I didn't cry, but I began to feel again. Slowly, carefully, like someone learning a forgotten language. Sometimes I still remember. The version of me that didn't make it. The one who smiled while breaking. Who stayed silent when she should have screamed. I don't mourn her anymore. I thank her. Because without her endurance, I wouldn't be here. Alive in the quiet. At peace in the storm's memory. Love came back to me one day. Not as a person, but as a feeling. It came disguised as forgiveness. And when I forgave the past, I realized love had never left. It had only been waiting for me to open my heart again. I learned to love myself first. The unspoken, unhealed, unpolished parts. Because if I could love my brokenness, then no one could ever use it against me again. The girl who didn't cry now laughs softly in her solitude. Not because she forgot the pain, but because she finally made peace with it. She wears her silence like silk, not as armor, but as art. I am her, the one who died inside, but still found a way to bloom. The one who learned that strength isn't the absence of tears. It's the courage to smile after you've drowned in them. And if anyone asks, how did you survive? I'll tell them, by listening to the quiet, by trusting the unseen, by realizing that even death inside the heart can become rebirth if you refuse to stay buried. Now, when the world looks at me, they see peace. But only I know the wars I fought to earn it. They see grace. But only I know the graves I built to plant it. And maybe I didn't cry, but I lived. And that is enough. Crescent moon, I didn't cry, but I was dead inside. And still, somehow, my soul learned how to rise again. Dizzy,